All right, all right, all right. Here we go again. This time actually on Saturday. I almost forgot to actually do this one. I was hanging out with some people earlier today, and I just almost forgot that I was supposed to do this today, and then I promised I would do it. But I remembered, so we're going to do it. And it's going to be a fun time, and it's going to be great. Hello, hello. We're just going to wait for a few more people to get in here, and then we're going to start. I don't usually, as always, I don't usually wait very long to get started with these, but as per usual, this is a sort of quote-unquote fan fun character review thing that I'm doing once a week now. I do pre-select the characters I review on these streams, and I just stream them because it's a little bit easier for me, and then it allows me to do something weekly. But of course, if you are interested in doing fan fun, or submitting a character to fan fun, or being considered for fan fun, then please go check out the link in the description to the journal. It talks about that there's character reviews there, but that's also where you can apply. You can apply for having. I blanked there for a second. Having normal character things, just character requests, other things, all sorts of fun stuff that you might have seen on my channel, or maybe not. I don't know. My views are very, very low nowadays. So, excuse me, are these my heart skipped a beat? Are these my girls? They may be. They could possibly be. But yes, we're going to have fun. So. That's that, and just you feel free to check it out. I only do them through DeviantArt for right now, just because it's significantly easier for me to keep organized. But with that, I'm not going to stall for too long, so we're going to get started. So the characters we are going to be looking at today are Chocolate Milk Rose. Their characters Althea and Antheia. Is that how you pronounce them? Is that how you pronounce them, Rose? I'm just not entirely positive. But I'm assuming it's Althea and Antheia. But this is cool to actually have the person who owns the characters in a stream. That's fun. Because the previous two, I don't think they were in the stream when it happened. So, yeah, that's fun. So, yes, we're going to be doing that. Hey, this is exciting. Well, this will make it easy if I have any questions for you and things like that. That could help. But of course, first of all, we got to do the actual appearances first, because as before, I like doing the initial appearance first, then the bio, and then back to the appearance if I have any other notes on top of that. Just because, as before, there's I do believe that the first impressions your character gives off are important, but at the same time, a character's story can affect a lot about their appearance and stuff like that. So yeah. Oh, is there a pronunciation? I'm sorry. I'd make a conscious choice not to read them before I pick them. I just skim it just to see how long it is, and then I pick it. Just because I don't want to have any like preconceived notions or anything like that. But yes. So, just first a thing on the designs. I think they're nice. They're pretty simple, pretty streamlined. You can get kind of an idea of their personalities a little bit on it. Most pretty decent color choice and all that kind of thing. The one thing I will say is I do feel like in a way there are some colors that I will say the one thing is that the flower is a bit the fact that it has the green center is a little odd, just because I can't think of many flowers that have a green center. It's usually yellow because there's pollen in those areas. And things like that. So I would just I think green's probably not the best choice for the inside of the flower. If it is supposed to be a real flower. If it's a fake flower, it's whatever. But it can be whatever colors you want if it's a fake flower. But if it is supposed to be a real flower, I think yellow would be a better color for that, just because that's just more akin to real life, or just to reference a very specific flower when drawing it. Because this is kind of a non-specific, generic flower TM, you know. I think yellow would be a better choice there. There are some weird flowers out there that have like weird differences, but most flowers do have the middle of them having yellow in it because it is pollen. Other than that, there's not much I have to say. The only other thing I could maybe suggest is maybe just a little bit of cohesion in terms of color. It does feel, especially on, let me actually go see how to pronounce it, on Antheia, it does feel like her colors are a little bit all over the place just because she has brown, then her hair is dyed red, and then her eyes are light blue, and then her shirt is bright cyan, and then her necklace is just a darker cyan, and then she's got black shorts. It just feels like her colors are a little bit all over the place. So there could be a little bit more cohesion with her colors, but it's not like that. Not anything like bad though. These are like pretty pleasant. They're not like super crazy, and they do have they do kind of have a nice little comparable personality to them. So yes, that's initial thoughts on the thing. I think the only thing that even jumps out at me at all is just the flowers is a bit funky, having the green center to it. I think yellow would be a bit better color choice for that. So we're going to go, and I did pick a very long one this time, so we're going to have a night. So here we go. So the names are Antheia and Althea, which from what this says, that's Althea, that's Antheia. Just so we're all on the same page here, chat. So they don't have any nicknames, or oh, they do have nicknames. I'm sorry, I thought that was blank. I'm glad I'm getting advice on the colors. That was always the hardest part when it came to these two with me. Yeah. Generally, it's just like color cohesion. I don't usually hear that suggested a lot, which is why I like to bring it up. Is just the idea of having some color cohesion, because even though we in real life don't exactly match every single thing we wear, from a character design standpoint, it's usually beneficial. You can argue realism all you want, but sometimes aesthetic things matter. You know what I mean? Sometimes aesthetics are important. I would also just recommend, if her flower is real, I'd actually look up a reference for a flower to put in her hair, just because it helps make things feel a little bit more real, just a little. But yeah. So, sorry, back to the thing. So, for Antheia, her sister doesn't always give her nicknames, but sometimes she'll call her Anne or Ia. Antheia is actually really fond of the nickname Annie and lets her friends, even the ones who only know her for a bit, call her that. Well, Althea, she doesn't really like when other people give her nicknames because to her it feels like something special and sacred. When other people give her nicknames, it feels like something special and sacred. Okay, and the only one she trusts enough to give her nicknames is Antheia, who calls her Thea, Allie, or Al. Thea just for fun. Come on, Thea, let's go. Allie, when she really wants something, look how cute it is, Allie. And Al, when she's trying to hype her up, you're amazing, Al. Okay. I think I don't have any problems with that. I just think the grammar on the one for Althea could be a little better. Again, that's a nitpick. This isn't at all character related. Just because at first when it says she doesn't really like when other people give her nicknames, we haven't exactly established who's allowed to give her nicknames. So saying other people out of the gate just is a little confusing, because you don't know who would qualify as quote unquote other people, like non-friends, non-family, that kind of thing. So I would just suggest, maybe just actually adding that in the end, just opening it up with saying her sister gives her these nicknames, and she doesn't really like when other people give her nicknames. I think that would just be a better formatting of it, but that's just a nitpick. That's not anything significant. They're both 15 in human years, both female, date of birth August 25th. A hidden clearing in the forest in Michigan, hidden away from humans. They're like satyrs, but with reindeer legs instead of goat legs. They also have antlers and ears. Most of the time they shift into a more human appearance when doing business. Antheia takes, or this is their job, Antheia takes scenic photos and makes postcards and is working on painting beautiful landscapes, though she mostly does it for fun instead of an actual paying job. Althea sculpts, but mostly collects items to sell to travelers wander around the compliments. Their continents. There's a little bit of a grammatical error there. They're both travelers. Their world, the timeline they live in, is just Earth, but magical/mythical creatures exist. They're just super smart and well hidden. That seems fair. But it tends to fail me when I'm writing bios for some reason, so apologies in advance. No worries, I understand. I'll go back to some of my bios I've had written for years and notice grammatical errors. It's not usually a big deal, so long as somebody can kind of get the idea of what you're trying to say. I don't agree with the people who are just like, oh, this bio has a grammatical error, let me talk about that for 15 minutes, you know? But like, I will say, just going back to it real quick, I feel like this is a little bit more of an art thing to you rather than an actual character thing. But I do feel like their antlers could better resemble reindeer antlers, just because these ones, like, let me just get the picture real quick. Reindeer antlers. And again, this isn't a big deal. This is just a sort of like personal advice, just an art advice kind of a thing, but typically reindeer antlers look a little bit more, they curve more out. Like, I think this is a pretty good picture of, like, from different angles, they're more curved out and they're more rounded. The ones they have look like they kind of go straight up and they branch out like branches, as opposed to reindeer antlers. And even reindeer can have asymmetrical antlers, so that's not at all what I'm saying. I'm just saying that they look, currently, just in this picture, they look a bit more like the sort of Christmas antlers you wear on your head for Christmas, or you stick on your dog while your dog looks really disappointed in you. So that's just an art suggestion of maybe looking at some references. They actually have like a little baby in the background that has like some smaller antlers right there, but they still like have some curvature to them, and their points aren't so random, as they kind of go they have a little bit more, how should I say it? Like a little bit more of a flow to them. I just look up some references and find some, just because right now they don't entirely look like they don't strike me as reindeer antlers. And you can very easily make these two characters read as reindeer, I think, if you just adjust how their antlers look a little bit. But that's just more of an art critique than it is a character critique, for sure. I do like that they're reindeer, like, specifically. That's kind of neat. So yes, on to their appearance. I might skip. I'll read this. Okay. If I might skip things that are obvious. While human, they stand at 5'10", although Antheia is 1 inch taller, which means she's actually 5'11". When in their deer form, they're both about 6 foot. Okay, does that... I'm sorry. I'm just trying to picture in my mind what evens them out when they're in their deer form. Would it... I mean, I guess if she... I don't know. I'm just... That's fine. It's not really a big critique. It's just a little odd picturing that they both have human forms, but one of them's just an inch taller in the human form, and then their deer form, they're both the same height. Unless you wanted to say it's because Althea's like antlers growing faster, so the antlers make up for it, which would be kind of funny. But it's a little odd, but not a problem really. They're both pretty fair skin, but Althea's is a bit tanner, which is even more noticeable sometimes when she's a deer. Is it? Oh yeah, I guess it is. Yeah, it is hard to see yeah, I can see it. I would recommend maybe making it, if she's a bit tanner, I'd make it a bit warmer, because it's hard to, might be the green background throwing me off, but if it's tanner, it should look a little bit warmer. Right now, hers just looks darker, like if you had your color thing open in Photoshop or something, or whatever program you use. It looks like you took Antheia's color and just moved it straight down just a little bit. But what you should do is take it down and also move it a little bit towards the color, so like a bit to the right. Just because it's like when you get a tan, your skin also becomes warmer as well as darker. It doesn't just get darker. So that would just help give her a bit more of an impression of a tan, as opposed to just having like a slightly darker skin tone, which is a little bit hard to tell in the picture. But that's just a suggestion, if she is tanner, at least to a point where it's noticeable. Both oval face shapes. Athena's are green. These are sky blue. When deers, their faces sparkle, as all creatures with hind legs of animals do in this world. The colors are different depending on the creature, and sometimes a little bit shines through when around other mythical creatures, and instead of blushing, they sparkle. That's cool. I kind of like the idea of instead of blushing, they sparkle. Although it's not really presented on this ref. Like, does that mean... I think there should be some clarification on, like, what that means. Like, is their skin just shimmery, or is it actually, like, sparkling consistently? And they just sparkle more when they're embarrassed or attracted to someone or something like that. I just think there should probably be a little bit of clarification there. Because I think if they shimmer, that would be really cool. But if they actually sparkle, like, from their pores, I think that should be a little represented in their reference. But if they shimmer, that is cool either way. I think that's an interesting little idea. Other facial features. Althea has a few small freckles on her nose, while Antheia is immaculate of anything. Both siblings is jealous of each other. Or their hairstyle. Althea, her hair is shown a short, thick bob. That's kind of in the picture. Hers an inch below her shoulders. Althea at the bottom, Althea likes to cut it. Althea loves having her hair cut. She's just a light brown to Charmaine. To a dark. Okay, this would be... Okay, I was a little confused about because it seemed like you were describing that there's a little bit more of a gradient to her hair, and right now it just kind of looks like it goes straight from brown to red. But that was just me being confused at the wording there for a second. Antheia's is more rectangular. She has broader shoulders than Althea, but not by a lot. Still pretty rectangular, but has a bit of an hourglass, is trying to peep through. She wears bigger shirts to hide the fact that her breasts. I thought her breaths were bigger, and I was like, I don't know if that's something to be embarrassed about, but I think you meant breasts. Are bigger than Antheia's. Antheia's would never admit it, but she's jealous of Althea's shape, especially since Antheia is very proud by nature. All right. Sorry, I was trying to remind myself which is which for a second. All right. Posture, they both are normally stand pretty straight as humans. Though Antheia does like to lean back a bit. They hunch over a bit when in deer form. Dress, Althea likes light shirts with noodle straps or short sleeves, leggings, and shorts. She also tends to wear a lot of loose-fitting clothing to cover up her build for the sake of her sister. Antheia prefers t-shirts with jeggings since jeans are too uncomfortable for them. Sometimes wears carry for tools. Her leather satchel with a painted flower on it. She found it when they were abandoned and uses it for storing items as her favorite first aid kit. And Antheia, in almost matching, but obviously worse for wear than satchel that she made over several years ago to match her sister's. It holds paints, paintbrushes, and a pair of binoculars found in the first satchel and their accessories. Althea always has a flower in her hair because Antheia really likes giving her flowers for her hair. And Antheia likes buying cute charms and has a few of those, but Besides bracelets, her main go-to accessory is her binoculars. She also has a perfectly cut topaz gem she found while hiking. She wears it as a necklace with a simple bit of string as a chain. She thinks it's too much from the natural wonder to seek, which kind of frustrates her sister. Okay, so I do think, as a bit of advice, this appearance section, there's a lot in here that I don't think needs to be said. Like, especially, like, stuff about, like, their hair color and their, what they wear and things like that. I will say, I can fully understand somebody wanting to expand on a character's body type a little more, especially if they feel, like, just to make sure people know, like, this is what body type they're supposed to have if they feel like it's not well represented in the artwork. But there's a lot of this that I don't think needs to be included in the picture and should just be shown in the reference and left at that. Just because there's a lot here that I can just look at and see and is just repeated for me in the reference. And I think there's even things in here that's mentioned that should be in the picture. Like it said that, where was it? That one of them has freckles on their nose and the other doesn't. I feel like in that case that we should see the freckles on her nose. You know what I mean? Oh no, is my... Sorry, I thought my stream blipped for a second there. Yeah, okay. So, like, it said that one of them had freckles on her nose, and I don't really see that in the picture. Things like that. It says the other one also has a satchel, but she's not wearing it. So I would just suggest maybe representing those more in the picture rather than writing them out. I think body types all right to include, especially if you just want to make sure people know what it's supposed to be. If like you feel like you haven't represented it correctly and stuff like that. But I do think there's a lot in here that could be left just for the visual picture rather than included in the bio per se, or just repeated in the bio, you know what I mean? But that's, I just think that there might be a lot of stuff in here that you could cut out. Stuff like height, stuff like weight, stuff like body type and face shape. That's not usually bad to include, especially if somebody's going to be drawing these characters for you. But, I think a lot of it can be left to the reference itself as opposed to in the character bio. Now we're on to more technical or righty sort of stuff. There's a lot. All right. So life skills. Althea is very good at crafting, especially when it comes to modeling natural gems and plants into awesome jewelry and accessories. Antheia is great at photography and is getting very good at painting. Incompetence. Althea is a very slow runner. I'm gonna rewind a little bit. I'm gonna read these because I'm getting a little confused having to hop back and forth between them in my mind. I'm gonna go ahead and read them. I'm going to just go through this list. I'm going to read Althea's first, and then I'll read Antheia's. And so just because it's just getting a little confusing, and I would suggest perhaps maybe actually just separating these both and having two bios for them rather than this one long combined bio, because it is a little confusing to go back and forth and having to switch between the sisters in my mind. I might recommend maybe trying to separate the two into two separate bios so you can focus on one and then the other one separately rather than having to write them both exactly side by side, word for word. Are we allowed to submit the same character for categories of fan fun? Yes, but please, I'm not going to answer any more of those questions until I'm done with this review. I'm just going to say that right now. But yes, you can submit the same character in other categories. That's fine. So I'm going to go back through and I'm going to just read Althea's first and they'll go back and read Antheia's. So Althea, she's very good at crafting, especially when it comes to molding natural gems and plants into awesome jewelry and accessories. She's a very slow runner. If being chased by a bear, she'd have to give up halfway through and lie on the floor with a bunch of leaves on her. Althea is very good with business. She has an extremely good business sense and could sell land to a fish. With her sister's help, that is. As her sister's upbeat attitude and somewhat manipulative demeanor is very helpful when working with troublesome clientele. She also is very good at math and adding up costs and discounts and everything, which is why she's in charge of the shop. Althea is not very athletic at all. She's a bit thinner and way weaker than her sister and would sooner give herself up for Antheia than try to run for her life. She's good at hiking, but she is incredibly slow and clumsy, especially for a deer creature. Afraid of small dogs. Large dogs she's fine with, but small dogs make her uncomfortable. They are concerningly small, Annie. Has weak sense of almost everything besides hearing and touch. She can't smell as well as her sister, and her eyesight is poor. She's especially sensitive. The slightest cut will make her shout, and she bruises easily. It's good because it makes it harder to sneak attack on her. Wait. It's good because it makes it harder to sneak attack on her or to set her on fire or something, but still it makes it easy for her to bend to your will, as she is a Leo. She's a Leo. Wait. Sorry, she's a Leo afraid of pain. She has anger issues, is super easy to piss off, which she is working on, but since she is not very good for business, it's not very good for business to yell at customers. So I'm just a little confused by this, section. It's a little confusing. I think what you're trying to say is it's good because it's good because she's sensitive and she's usually, Sorry, I'm a little, because you say sensitive as in she's like physically sensitive, like her skin is sensitive, and so she'll cut and she'll bruise easily, but I don't see how that specifically translates to making it harder to sneak up on her, set her on fire, especially because if she's sensitive, she should probably be a little bit easier to set. I think that just a lot of that wording is a little poor, but from what I get to it, I don't think being physically sensitive makes you harder to sneak up on, because that just doesn't, I don't quite see the connection there. If you mean she's also like sensitive to like changes in environment, or she's like, because she doesn't have great eyesight, she listens a lot better, like that would make sense. It's just, I think the connection between those two sentences is a little odd. But I do get the point, I think, of her weaknesses. She's not really a physical person, she's more of a mental person. Althea loves crafting, decorating, and organizing. When setting up shop, she tends to do the setting up and organizing and cleaning, while Althea does the heavy lifting. She bites her nails and taps her foot when nervous. She makes slightly irritating noises when with her mouth when bored. I'm assuming you mean stuff like clicking her tongue and stuff like that. Antheia wants a Newfoundland dog after meeting a half-blind one named Albert in Casper, Wyoming, but Althea says the dog wouldn't like doing all the moving they do. The closest they got to a pet was a bluebird named Blueberry, who died a few months after they found them. Oh, well, that's sad. Area residents, they move around too much and have an official area of too much around to have an official area of residence. As long as it's in the United States and has at least one good foresty park or field, they've been there. They've even given desert areas like Arizona and Nevada a try, though Michigan is still their home at heart. They at least get $30 a week, which is enough for them, but on good weeks, they can get up to $60 US. Job satisfaction, they love it and could never imagine doing anything else. Well, Antheia could imagine other things, but even though then she still has the current job in her heart and to at least be a side job. Pretty good. They try to stay healthy since medical bills are a pain, even if they go to doctors and hospitals specifically made for mythics like them. Besides the physical disadvantages, they manage to stay fit and healthy through the traveling they do and the natural medicines they find out in the wild. Okay, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna read Antheia's real quick, and then I'm gonna go back because I do have a point that I do want to just throw out there, just as a consideration point. So we're gonna go and read Antheia's now. So that was Althea's, and this is Antheia's. Antheia is great at photography and is getting very good at painting. She's impatient and picky as hell. She has very specific tastes and will let everyone know it. She's also not good as a business. She's not as good as business as her sister, and will sometimes raise the prices of their wares and make bartering hard so they can keep the trinket they're trying to sell. I kind of like that. I don't know. I like the idea of somebody being like, they're trying to barter something to sell it, but then because they're arguing for it, they get emotionally attached to it, so then they don't let the other person have it, and it's just like, well, what? How are we going to get money now? Like, that's kind of funny. All right. Antheia is a people person. She loves being around people and understands what to do to get someone to buy something. If she has to, she can play with people. She can play people like the fiddle. She's also pretty fast and strong, which is useful for transporting. Sorry, that was a mark on my screen. That wasn't wasn't a misspelling. Very useful for transporting the trade shop around the U.S. She has a keen eye, especially for shiny things, which is how they're able to keep finding gemstones to use for business. I am going to put this out there. I do find it a little odd. I will say it's a little bit inconsistent, the fact that it mentions right before that she makes bartering hard so they can keep the trinket they're trying to sell. But then in the next thing it says that she's very good at kind of like manipulating people into buying something. I think that either needs like expanding on as to where the line divides that. Like, is it her sister that divides that line? Is like her sister the mediator who keeps her from going over the line? Is it just that when it comes to the actual price itself that she finds it difficult? Like, can she actually play up something like a salesman? It's just when it comes to the actual technical money part, she doesn't know what things are really worth and things like. I just think there needs to be more expansion on that, because as of right now, reading those two lines back to back feels a little contradictory to her personality, which is not to say she can't be both, you know? It's not to say that she can't get super attached to what she's selling to where she doesn't sell it, and also be really good at convincing people to buy things, but just to put them back to back as they are right now is a little confusing and seems a little bit like conflicting testimonies of her personality, if you know what I mean. All right. So, oh God, I lost my place. Hang on one second. Okay. All right. Sorry. I thought I was going to sneeze. All right. So, Anthea is ADD as hell, gets distracted easily and won't apologize for it. Did you see that bird alley? It was huge. While her sister is clumsy in the walking standing sort of way, Anthea is the kind of clumsy that is constantly dropping and losing stuff. She dropped her camera 10 times by now. The only reason it didn't break was because it was around her neck by a leather strap. Can't swim for the life of her, just as Anthea would never run for her life. Anthea would never swim for hers, and she would promptly drown. Can't tell the difference between dangerous and dangerously cute, and has scars to show that. I like that. I like the idea of them being like Althea is clumsy on her feet and she's not very like elegant. She doesn't have dancer's feet kind of a thing, but Anthea on the other hand has really lacks dexterous hands and does not have like really good control over hands and things like that. I kind of like that contrast. Hobbies. Anthea loves to paint and photography and photograph almost everything. Sorry, that was my fault. If she can't do one of these things for any time longer than half an hour, she starts to get anxious. Anthea picks at her nails, antlers, and hooves when she has them, and twiddles her hair when nervous or embarrassed. When bored, she starts pretending to take pictures or traces over stuff with her finger. And then we get back to the stuff that's combined for both of them. So I am going to throw out there what I am a little bit, and for all I know, it's explained below, but because we still have a lot to get to. But what I'm a little confused with, like how they make at least $30 a week, which is not that enough, like even up to $60 is not a lot of money to make in a week. And if they're living in a modern day, I'm a little lost how the two of them have managed to be off the radar for so long without needing to because how do they get their food? Do they go buy it somewhere, or do they is there a secret mythic market? Do they go get it from the wild? I mean, that's possible. There's plenty of people who actually can do that, but I mean, assuming because they're part reindeer, I'm assuming they're vegetarian, but I'm not sure. So I mean, is always possible that they get their food from the wild. But then when it comes to things like, I mean, does the secret mythic hospitals also have health insurance, or is that a separate thing? I mean, it did mention something about medical bills are a pain. And on top of that, where do they stay exactly? It says they have a shop, but is this they own a caravan that they take places? Do they own a food truck kind of thing that they take place? That'd be kind of funny if it was a food truck, but it's not a food truck. It's a wares shop that they take on the road. I think there's just a lot here that's a little bit up in the air in terms of the monetary side and how they actually stay functioning, especially in a modern day world. Especially in the modern day US, just because I live here and I know how expensive shit can get. Because then, I mean, that's not even starting to talk about how do they buy clothes? How do they wash their clothes? How do they do they do dishes? And if they do, how do they wash those? How do they, I'd I'd explore that. I'm only bringing that up because if you haven't thought about this stuff, I would, because you can come up with a lot of interesting stuff that way. I just think that's a realm that probably should be explored and expanded upon more. You do a little bit when you mention the stuff with like how medical bills are a pain. But I think there's more that can be done there. Like, how do they evade doing taxes even? Like, how do they get away with tax evasion? But, I think there's more that can be expanded on there. And, like, just a lot of the logistics of how mythicals are supposed to survive hidden in this world, in a world where everyone's kind of accounted for at all times. You know what I mean? So I just explore that a little bit more with the world in general on how mythics go about that kind of thing. Personality, and again, I'm going to read Althea's first, and then I'm going to go to Antheia. Althea, the more stoic of the two, she has more control over emotions and outbursts, though she's just a softie on the inside. She's the crafty, business-savvy sister who needs order and control in her life. She gets flustered easily by teasing, which is why her sister only teases her when she wants something. Althea won't react as openly as Antheia will about things. Despite all of this, when Althea is scared, her reactions will be more dramatic. More tears, more screaming, more shaking, etc. This isn't true, but it's still a concern of hers. This isn't true, but it's still a concern of hers. I'm a little confused what you mean by that. Like, you mean that last sentence is a little confusing. You might need to go back and either fix that or something, because I'm a little confused what that means. And yes, Rose, you may steal any idea that I propose to you. Feel free. That's what I'm here for. All right, so Althea has pretty good self-control unless she gets agitated or afraid. Motivation. Oh, their motivation is just to live the life to the fullest, the most enjoyable ways possible. Althea is discouraged by worrying about who will die first, and even though it's morbid, she wants them both to die at the same time. She gets discouraged by worrying about who will die first. I don't think that would count as like a discouragement exactly. I think a discouragement is a little bit more. I want a documentary on fey creatures committing tax evasion now. Thank you for that. That would be a wild time. Just as a guy going around the woods, like asking squirrels, like, hey, how do you feel about avoiding paying taxes every month while everybody else in America is paying the taxes for you? Like, it'd be a stupid parody documentary. But I think discouragement is more like, what's the kind of shit that will like immediately turn them off from something? Like, for example, for me, if like I'm having a hard time working with a editing program and like I'm trying to cut something right and it won't cut, and then I finally get it cut, but I'm so frustrated that I just give up and I throw up my hands and leave. I don't think discouragement would. I think who will die first is a bit more of a either a distraction or just a fear, you know what I mean? I don't know if you need discouragement in there, because I don't think that that's a really like important character point to put in here. I think because plus like it might distract her a lot. Like, because I know there are things that you can start like thinking about and you get so wrapped up in thinking about them that like it just keeps you from properly doing things. I've had that, like when you're like, it's in the middle of the night, you think of something really dark and it just makes you really upset, and you just keep thinking and thinking and thinking about it, and it's like you can't like just do anything because you're so focused on that for some reason. But that's not a discouragement, because like, we're just gonna do this real quick. I'm just curious. Courage. We're gonna look up the definition of discouragement: a loss of confidence or enthusiasm, despitedness, an attempt to prevent something by showing disapproval or creating difficulties, deterrent. So I don't exactly think having a worry about who will die first would exactly count as a discouragement in this case. I just think that there either needs to be a better name for that, or that just should be taken out of that section probably. That's my only point. And I just think a discouragement is just, I'm not quite sure exactly what's supposed to count as a discouragement. Excuse me, miss, do you know how much you've affected the economy with your crimes? Sorry, that's funny. All right. Intelligence level, she's like an 8 out of 10. Her confidence level is about a 6 out of a 10. Her philosophy: respect nature, and nature will respect you enough to donate some nature so you can profit. Also, don't be a dick. Not a bad philosophy. Not a bad philosophy. Althea, her greatest fear and phobia: small dogs, and that one day one of her sisters will die, and the other one will, or one of the sisters will die, and the other one will be miserable. All right, so that's Althea, and now to Antheia. I do feel like I do want to say, no, I'll wait. I'll read Antheia's and I'll say it. So for Antheia, her personality: Antheia is excitable and energetic and quite a bit mischievous. She'd never cause too much trouble for her sister, but she loves messing with people verbally. She'd never pull a full-on prank or something, but she likes to twist people's thoughts and opinions, make it easier to sell things. She's pretty sly despite being an excitable ball of fluff most of the time. She's pretty open about her feelings and tends to spew out whatever she's thinking and can be uncomfortable for some. Though it's gotten on her short-term boyfriends or girlfriends before, which Althea, a nervous and mostly stoic child, admires. When it comes to fear, however, Antheia tends to be the calmer one. Fright normally turns to irritation, and irritation turns to intrigue for Antheia. I feel like there's a weird, because it's implying that she's not manipulative enough to pull a full-on prank on someone, yet she is manipulative enough to twist people's minds and tell them lies. I feel like there's a little bit of a weird standard here for what she will and won't do, in terms of messing with people, because I feel like a prank is something more childish and not the super cruel stuff that we're not going to talk about, the prank YouTube stuff. I just mean the harmless ass, hey, shake my hand, I have a hand buzzer on there kind of pranks, that feels that almost feels more fitting for what Antheia has been described up until this point than just being what kind of sound. And it could just be the wording. It could very much just be the wording. But the wording saying that she's sly, and she, where was it? Twisting people's thoughts and opinions. That's a little bit more what I'd call cold and calculating than childish manipulation. You know what I mean? Which she can still be that verbally, It can totally be that thing of just if you mess with a child by saying just oh, didn't you know that butterflies are born when the bark rots off a tree, it falls off and it turns into a butterfly and flies away. And I could see her being that kind of person. And even I could see her being I could, and in a weird way, I can see her being that person of who posts shit posts online that are meant to mess with people who are more gullible. You know what I mean? The people who tried to screw with, or the person who tried to screw with people by saying didn't you know that Subway puts dihydrogen monoxide in their sandwiches, even though it's a flame retardant and all this stuff? And, dihydrogen monoxide is water. So, I could see her being that kind of person. I just feel it's a little weird that, twisting people's thoughts and opinions is an okay thing that she's cool with doing, and she'll do that. But pranks? Definitely not. Pranks are too far. You know what I mean? Even though most genuine pranks are pretty harmless. So I think that just there needs to either be a little bit, maybe a rewording of some of these things, or maybe just a little bit of a, she's the kind of person who would say something vague are you sure about that, and make a person freak out a bit. See, that I wouldn't call twisting people's thoughts and opinions. I think that maybe just some better language should be used there. Maybe just more she's good with making people question their opinions, or just kind of messing with people, making the the kind of person where what is it, the kind of person where it's you'd say something, it's oh, I had a bad day. Why? Well, I just did. Why? Well, because it was a bad day. Why? And that kind of thing. I just think maybe just a better wording there, because when I read twisting people's thoughts and opinions, it just feels a little bit stronger than I think it's supposed to mean. But sorry, that was a bit too long of a tangent. She has weak ass self-control, and it would get to her into more trouble if it wasn't for Althea. She sometimes worries that maybe there's more for them out there than if they more out there for them if they just tried, but she's content with her sister. See, I could see that being a discouragement. So yeah, I could see that being, I can see that. So her intelligence level, she's at 6.5 out of 10. Her confidence level is an 8.5. And then her greatest fear is extreme claustrophobia. Being in small spaces or even just inside for too long makes her super uncomfortable and basically just want to die. All right. And okay, this is what I'm going to bring up. Reading the life thing with the attitude thing, I feel like these could easily be put together in a more cohesive, one paragraph explanation kind of a thing. This is actually a big thing that I have, and I wanted to actually sit down and talk about it for a little while. Just because I've discovered something with bios, because I used to think that when you do a bio, you have to be super specific, separate every single little thing into different categories and explain every little detail of something and break it down all together. But I've realized that it's actually not always the most effective way to do that. And there's actually way more effective ways to do that kind of stuff and organize that kind of stuff. And I'll actually save it and I'll go back and I'll reestablish it, because I think it's something that could help this bio kind of as a whole a little bit. So like kind of as a whole a little bit. So I'll read the rest of it and I'll say what I'll have to say, and then I'll bring it up, because I do think this is some kind of like I do think it's actually advice that could help a lot of people in writing bios, because it certainly has helped me a lot. So her childhood life, despite their childhood life, I'm sorry. Despite being abandoned in the woods to fend for themselves, they both agree that they have had a pretty fun and educational childhood. They learned everything they needed to know for survival from wildlife, like mini Tarzans. They've gathered what they needed from scavenging, collecting, hunting, digging, etc., until they were about 15, when they learned they could use their skills to actually make a living for themselves in the real world. But what's more real than living in the forest? Important past events. The day a traveling tradesman came by and inspired them to sell small trinkets and travel the country. Best accomplishment. One day a wealthy guy around their age came by, and so like a kid around their age came by and offered to lend them places to stay when they traveled in return for small gifts from time to time. Turned out his family owned a small band of hotels and motels, and he offered them to stay in certain motels in return for some items in the gift shop. I have a couple notes. For one thing, if we're gonna go off Tarzan for real quick, like that they kind of raised themselves and stuff like that. Tarzan still was raised by something, and he was raised by gorillas, hence why he acted like a gorilla. For one thing, I think there needs to be a mention about when they were abandoned in the woods, because abandoned in the woods as a child can mean a lot of things. That can mean anything from like as babies they were just tossed in the woods and left to rot, or it could mean that they were like 10 years old when their parents just like took them to the woods and like Hansel and Gretel style, like, bye kids, like, you know. So there can be a lot of things like that. And if they were 10, I could see them both like figuring things out and kind of understanding it and whatever. But if they were like a kid, like if they were 4 years old, I don't foresee them being able to just survive in the woods without having a pretty difficult time figuring out how to do that, especially in the US, you know, because there are a lot of areas that are kind of like mostly abandoned, but in a lot of them you're probably going to run into a person at some point, and that would mean they would have had to learn how to disguise themselves, how people are. And not only that, but if they did, and you could go with the route of like maybe that because they're like reindeer, because they're like reindeer, they were just, sorry, I'm blanking here. They were raised by reindeer, but then they wouldn't act like people. They'd act like reindeers more likely. So I think that there needs to be some clarification on like how old they were, exactly how they, like a little bit more detail into their past, I think. I mean, their backstory is here, so I'll take back what I said if whatever happened in the backstory. But yeah, I mean, even then, honestly, I don't even think you need this past thing, because their backstory can answer all of these 3 questions. But I guess we'll come back to that. I'm sorry. Worst moment. It was a huge storm in Miami. We can make it. We can get there. Let's go. They couldn't make it. They lost an entire wagon of goodies. They found some of the items that had survived though their paintings, calendars, postcards, etc. were left in ruins. They eventually built everything up again, but was lost on that day. They are secretly sparkly deer people. Their best memory is sitting outside of a diner in California, eating vegetarian meals together and just laughing about nothing in particular. Days where they got stolen from or just lose something. Then they have to pour their hard-earned money into rebuilding their business. Okay, simplified backstory. So here we go. Story time, kids. The biggest thing I need to work on, order of information getting. That is usually, and that's not even a you thing. That's not like a personal thing on you at all. That's a problem a lot of people have. I've noticed in a lot of bios where people will like put information that is like up at the top and you're like, wait, what? And then like down below it expands on it. But you know, you should have probably just waited to say it then. But you know, it's a very common issue. It's very common. Their species of deer satyrs travel in herds they call tribes based on the species of deer they are. Even deeper into their tribes, there are pods, which are individual groups of deer satyrs traveling together. These deer creatures, though half human, don't follow many of the human customs, including marriage. Instead of getting married, the males of the species are allowed to date around. They can mate whoever they want and to have their child with the female's consent. Despite being old-fashioned, they still understand that women have a say in the matter as well as the guys. Then they can't date around anymore and have to settle down with their children. Althea and Antheia's father was an absolute lady killer who didn't actually care about the settling down bit and just wanted to enjoy the dating around. Their mother was absolutely stricken by him and wanted to be the one he would settle down with. She conceived his child, meaning he would have to make it official between them. Their father didn't want this and ran away to another pod. Furious, their mother abandoned them in the forest they were passing by. Seeing as these pods were nomadic, she knew it meant they would never get to meet them, but she didn't care. Althea and Antheia were weak children, seeing as how they see that's a long time to have a lot of loathing for your children before you abandon them in the woods, because it is calling them children, not babies. Like, or not totally babies. I mean, obviously, I'm not quite exactly sure how the exact aging of a deer person goes, but of a sparkly deer person, but it's a like to actually go through like with the full pregnancy to have not one but two kids and then have a loathing for what sounds kind of like at least a month or two, kind of a long time. And I don't know. I don't know. I feel like it's a little odd that she just straight up like, I'm just going to abandon them even though there's other people in this pod or something where I could just give it to, like, take this away from me. I don't want it, you know? But I don't know. I don't know all of her mother's characters, so it's hard, like, you know, not saying it wouldn't happen. I'm just saying it just seems like a very rash decision. I don't know, but they were weak children, seeing as they had heavy baby bodies and small deer legs. Unlike normal deer satyrs who learn to walk a few weeks after birth, it took them months to understand how to walk. Antheia getting it down before Althea. Thankfully, a regular deer had found them. She ignored the human half of them, more interested in the deer-legged part of them, which was covered in the white spots young deer have. She fed them... Hang on. I'm sorry, I'm curious about something. Actually, sorry. Sorry, I was curious because I was wondering what baby reindeer looked like, and it seems as if baby reindeer don't actually have white deer spots. So, I'm going to say, because all these pictures I'm seeing, there aren't any spots here. I'm seeing just smaller deer, and since they are based on reindeer, they, as babies, I mean, obviously they could be, if you wanted to say they're not strictly reindeer, they're just loosely based on reindeer, you know, that is what it is. But reindeer themselves don't seem to, oh, they're so cute. They don't actually seem to have spots. Because, like, that's not even a reindeer, that's a normal deer. That's just a normal woodland deer. So just, I don't know, I had an inkling because I was like, I don't think I've ever seen a picture of a baby reindeer with spots. So, sorry, I just wanted to check that real quick. So it does seem as if they actually would not have spots if they're exclusively reindeer satyrs. So she fed them and raised them until they were 5 in human years. Her own children were physically adults at this point, so she left. At this point, the girls were walking and talking fine, thanks to the little bits they had picked up here and there. From who? Wait. From the little bits of language they picked up from who? All right. They learned how to speak human English. Helps that their species is naturally gifted at language, being able to pick up and mimic languages in a snap. Not to mention their father had been watching them since they were 3, secretly helping them a lot. Well, that might explain it. But still confused how they just picked up some words and now no English. I wish it was that easy to learn a language. They started learning things for themselves at the ripe age of 5 and started putting things that they learned together at 6. They tend to be faster learner when you're a deer person abandoned in the woods. Althea had found her bag that the deer satyr father had left behind for them. He had felt bad about abandoning them, despite still being too mentally immature and selfish to want to raise them any further than helping them speak. Althea didn't know it was from him, and she'd never even considered the possibility that it was from her mother. She just liked it. Eventually, a traveling tradesman found the two 15-year-old girls in the woods, wearing nothing but leaves, flowers, and feathers, and other assorted flora. He traded them human clothes in return for precious minerals they had found, and told them about traveling and trading. Were they in their deer forms or human forms? Because if they were raised by a deer, like an actual deer, would they even know they could have human forms? So is this, I mean, that's fine if it's a traveling tradesman who, because I mean, obviously if mythical creatures just exist in this world and they just try to hide, there's always the highest chance that people know they exist, or at least there's rumors of it. So it's always possible that this tradesman's like, all right, deer kits, whatever, like, but it's just, I'm a little confused about like whether or not this is them having disguises and just being weird, like naked children in the woods, I guess. But then, or if it's like he sees deer children and it's just like, yeah, all right, that's fine, that's normal, it just, there needs to be a little clarification in there. Yeah, okay. So I think of them as characters is fun, and I like the idea of them, like living in the world, traveling around, whatever. But I think their backstory is a little bit chaotic. I kind of like the idea of their dad like wanting to help. I kind of like the idea if maybe if it was out of almost like a bit of shame, almost like those are definitely my kids, and I feel bad, so I'm gonna help, but I also don't feel like. I mean, honestly, I almost think like it would be a more tragic story if it's like he didn't feel like he deserved to raise them, or like he didn't feel like he could be a good father to them, or something like that, and that's why he didn't raise them specifically. And I almost, yeah, I just feel like there needs to be a little bit more like, just some questions to be answered and things like that, just to make it make a little bit more sense, especially how they like bits and pieces of the English language they picked up from where, because like, was it like campers that they like overheard and stalked and they heard them speaking words and kind of picked up on it? Being raised by a deer, why do they still act more like people than deer? I almost feel like if they were actually raised by deer, they'd have like an issue where it's like they wouldn't want to walk on their 2 legs. They'd want to walk on all 4s like a deer, So yeah, I do think the backstory could use another look over to just maybe help things make a little bit more sense and move a bit like more, what's the word? Like just feel a little bit more processed and a little bit more, just a little bit more sense in terms of, especially because like if you're comparing, because you did bring up the Tarzan comparison, Tarzan was raised by apes, so he acted like an ape, he communicated with the apes, and that's why whenever Jane showed up, Tarzan couldn't just communicate with her, he had to start learning human language from scratch essentially. And he acted like a gorilla, he probably thought he was a gorilla and all that kind of thing. So, and that could make for a very interesting story. I mean, what could even be interesting, too, is that, just as an idea, maybe they were raised in the woods, like a deer kind of helped protect them till they were 5 or something like that. Then maybe this traveling trader found these 2 deer satyrs in the woods and was almost like, maybe there's somebody who advocates for the rights of, like, mythical creatures or something, or wants to help protect mythical creatures or something like that. So like this guy or this trader adopts them and like helps take care of them, helps them, teach them how to like act more like people, and there you go. That's an explanation for why they act more like humans than they do actual deer creatures and things like that. Just an idea that could be interesting, and that's also could be why they got super into trading, because their dad was a trader, you know what I mean? It's like an interesting little idea I think could work for them. Now, overall though, I don't dislike them at all. I think that's an interesting, they got a very interesting dynamic going on. I think they have a cute little story. They have very nice little complementary personalities to each other. And I think they're cute characters, and I think there's a lot of potential with their story that could be expanded on and things like that. I think though, this is what my suggestion is for their actual bio though, and this is a suggestion I could offer to everybody, is there's a lot of information in here that feels like it doesn't need to be broken up. I used to be like, I used to very much believe, because this is what I saw online, and so I thought that's what it had to be, and like that's what a bio has to be. It has to be super, super detailed, and they have to have every single thing broken up into segments and whatever. And I feel like I've realized just by doing things, and I saw a friend of mine do this, and I was like, that's so informative, yet not like reading a novel, you know? And a technique is that just to put really like basic important information, things like race, things like names, things like whatever, but then to share their personality and their like fun, like their personality, some like accessories they have, some of their habits, some of their backstory, whatever, rather than like separating all of those up into little separate categories to where you have to kind of like jump around to put things together, is just to make like, say, fun facts and just start listing. Because that's what I actually do like for all my characters now, when I make official references for them. And the reason why is just because like it helps a lot, because it makes it a little bit easier to read. It makes it so you can focus on one thing, just say everything you need to about that one thing, and then keep going. And it helps a lot where you don't have this weird like again, like the fact that their past isn't even a section we need, because all of this stuff can technically be included in a backstory. And I mean, I even think when it comes to backstories, you sometimes don't even need to write out your entire character's backstory. You can just sometimes hit the important points about like, here's this big event, here's this big event, here's the establishing setting, all that kind of thing, and just keep going, you know, rather than having to write out an entire novel for your characters. It's probably not something that's going to work for everybody. I think some people do love the longer bios, and I think that's more power to you if you like the longer bios. I just think that, just from my experience, that sometimes having those more short and sweet bios where it's just little segments and bullet points talking about a character's personality. Plus, it means, in a weird mental way, it doesn't force you to have to separate a character's backstory from their bio. Or from their backstory from their personality. You know what I mean? Because I think a lot of people get like, I've seen and I've looked at a lot of characters, especially when I did my contest a while back, where they were characters who would have their personality written out and like all these personality traits, and when you read their backstory, you're like, where the hell is the personality? You know, like, what happened to the personality? This is like a totally different character, which isn't always a wrong thing, because I mean, obviously we change. That's not what I'm talking about. I just mean like a character's described as being manipulative, and in their story they seem to be getting like, they don't seem to be manipulating anyone. You know what I mean? And and plus, because and that also gets confusing about how personalities change and are fluid and aren't usually stagnant in every situation. And I think having those bullet points allows you to expand better on specific personality traits, while also being able to incorporate some backstory things, being able to describe what happened in their backstory that made them have this trait or something like that. So I would consider maybe rewriting. I think it would serve them good, because even though they are twins, they don't seem identical. They seem very individual from one another. I think it would serve them both good to have separate bios as a start, just to have both their information separate. And I mean, what you could even do is have all the separate stuff separate, but if there's anything that applies to both of them, have that at the bottom. In fact, you could do that. I think I did that on Chrome and Virus because they are both very intertwined characters. But at the same time, they have very distinct characters. So I think I did something where it said, like, here's the descriptor, like, here's points for each of them, and then here's a combination of both. I can't remember exactly if I did that or not. But that's what I would recommend for these two, is to have their separate information separate, and then at the very end share the information that's relevant to both of them. That can be where their backstory is and where their shared goals are and their shared experiences are and things like that. And then I just think that maybe condensing this a lot more and not feeling like you need to break all of this up into segments and things. And I will say, these aren't bad things to think about. When it comes to a character's personality, obviously their personality itself isn't the only part of that. You also have, stuff like motivation and self-control and philosophy and stuff. But I think at the same time, those are still personality. Those aren't bad things to think about. But I think after you think about them, your job then as a writer should be to combine all of those into one cohesive personality, per se. Or at the very least, be able to describe them all and separate them. And you are doing that. You are doing a very good job at expanding on their personalities and things like that. And expanding on, they are, they're more emotional in this way, or they're more business-like in this way, and things like that, which is very important to do, because it's always a better idea to write a paragraph about a character's personality rather than just listing personality traits and expecting people to understand what that means. You know what I mean? But overall, I think the biggest thing this bio could use help from is just a big refinement on their actual backstory and making things more clear about what happened to them and things like that, and how they got to the point where they're at. Maybe just some more exploration on the world in general, about how do they avoid how do they do tax evasion and things like that. And then on top of that, just maybe having it more organized and having things taken out that don't need to be there, making sure that things are explained before they are said, just maybe even taking the whole past part out. I think is the only thing I can say for sure you don't need is that past section, just because it's made very confusing when you have a backstory that can kind of answer a lot of those questions for you. And then on the last thing is I would explore doing them a certain way rather than having just a lot of details, but instead just putting here's the basic information. And here's just now we have bullet points where I talk about segments of their backstory or personality or whatever. And then, of course, the last thing I said before is I think their antlers could serve to look more reindeer-like. But other than that, they are very good characters, and I think this is a fantastic start for them, and I can't wait to see how these characters grow and where they develop to. And I think that'd be very, very interesting. So I hope that was helpful for you, Rose. And of course, as before, their creator is Chocolate Milk Rose. Go show them some love and all that kind of stuff. This was very fun and very long. I didn't expect this to be this long, but this was very fun and relaxing for me. So as I said before, if any of you are interested in having your character reviewed like this for a week or something like that, feel free to follow the link in the description. That's where I collect all the stuff for fan requests and things like that I can choose from. And I will be doing this next week, and I'm going to be trying to do it every week if possible. If not on Saturdays, I'll try to do them Sundays and things like that. And this was very fun, and it was actually fun to have the creator being able to watch the stream. So yes, with that out of the way, I will say thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video, which will hopefully be on Halloween. Wink, wink, wink. I got something special that's gonna happen, but I will see you guys in the next video. Bye! Or wait, no, that's my outro. I will see you in the next video, whatever that may be. Zodiac, out. That's my outro.